Welcome everyone to the Dreambuildrs podcast, to a brand new episode. I'm very excited for this upcoming episode. We'll talk about how you can show up with integrity and how you can create your bold legacy. And I invited Christine Lieu, the expert behind CL Designs and the Brand Party podcast. She's a graphic designer who's traded in climbing the corporate ladder for climbing mountains around the world. Christine helps purpose-driven businesses create cohesive branding, web design, and social content to drive your impact and sales. As featured in the Top 10 Canada Design, the Brand Party podcast delivers fun, honest, to-the-point advice that you can implement right away in your entrepreneurial journey. So Christine, thank you so much for coming on the Dreambuildrs podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
When I was just introducing you, I was thinking about that you actually traded in your corporate career for climbing mountains around the world. And to start off, I love mountains. So I would love to know, first of all, what are the mountains that you still have on your bucket list?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, COVID has impacted a lot of mountain climbing that I would like to be doing. But otherwise, pre-COVID, when I first started my business full time, I had one that was like very integral on my list was Machu Picchu. So that was a big one for me. It's a fun milestone. But I would love to hear, what is the one mountain that you recommend also?
Oh shit! I would love to go to the Mount Everest once. I'm not sure if I want to climb it, but I just want to see it. So at least going to base camp, for example, that would already be very, very cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I agree.
So maybe one day we can walk there together, who knows?
Absolutely.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about your backstory, because now you're an entrepreneur helping other purpose-driven entrepreneurs to build their businesses, basically, to make them more visible online. Tell us a little bit more about your move from corporate to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'll rewind a little bit further back to provide a little bit more context, is that my first step into entrepreneurship originally was actually owning and operating my own streetwear apparel brand. This was almost about 10 years ago now, so pre-drop shipping and everything else going on nowadays. But I really wanted to be able to put bold statements out there on graphic merchandise and apparel. And actually, band merchandising was something that I was really inspired by growing up. So that's kind of what led me into graphic design originally. But then especially in the arts, like I stopped taking science when I didn't need to. I stopped taking math when I didn't need to either. So my path was relatively chosen for me, I feel like, in a way. And so upon that, I had gone to school for graphic design. And even throughout that journey, I had been working with different startups as well. And that was a really great step to see, being able to do 360 of marketing, sales, prototyping, everything in between, but without the responsibility of having my own business. And so that was really appealing, to the point where I didn't even think that I was going to own my own business again until you graduate. And then I needed to get a quote unquote real job, and real life hits you in a way that you need to pay your bills and have some sort of societal stability in place. And it felt right at the time to be able to build my portfolio early on in my career, but at the same time going through working for different brands like Rogers Media Publishing in the editorial world and being nominated for Digital Publishing Award. And then one of our biggest broadcasters here in Canada at CBC, I was working as a digital associate producer and graphic designer before I quit my job. And so a big lesson that I learned throughout that process was that big companies or big names don't always mean the big impact that I wanted to create in the world. So being able to come to terms with that was a really big learning lesson for me, to be able to then take that leap confidently into CL Designs full time, as I had been freelancing kind of on and off, just to keep me not bored in a way either throughout my corporate journey.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And I'm thinking about, like, so you have been like freelancing on and off. You have been working for some pretty big, household names as well, big media companies. And like, what was that kind of sliding doors moment for you, or that like kind of defining moment to really start for yourself and helping others as well to on that journey, basically, right?
I think as a service-based business as well, I always feel like, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate, that when you find that purpose, you really want to be able to help others, and that comes so naturally as well to you. And sometimes to the point where you get burnt out, right? Because you're saying yes to everything, you want to help
Yeah.
everyone. And just being able to understand what your capacity is as well is a lesson that I'm constantly learning even today, and just keeping that in check. But I think that aha moment in a way to really open the doors for me was that I truly believe wholeheartedly that if you are talented, if you are hardworking, and you're willing to, put in the work at the end of the day and that dedication towards your dreams and passions, that you will always find opportunities. So having that abundant mindset is always helpful. It's not always easy, but I do believe mindset's really powerful in that way.
Wow. What I love about what you said in the beginning is that, when you find your purpose, basically, the kind of impact that you're creating, so that kind of keeps you going on, and you have that kind of fire in your belly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know
It's what
if you resonate with that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's what gets you out of bed on the less sunny days, right?
exactly. How was that journey for you? Did you find your purpose like with certain tools, or did it just
Mm.
kind of you found it your way through? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I feel like I almost tried to run away from it so many times, in a sense that there's a starving artist mentality out there, and I feel like society really brought me up in that way too, especially coming from a small town originally before I moved to Toronto, which is a bigger city here in
Mm-hmm.
Canada. That it the people that you surround yourself with is equally as important, I believe, because the people that I was growing up with, I have no judgment whatsoever how people live their life, but I just didn't see myself reflected necessarily in the way that they had lived theirs, in terms
Yeah.
of being able to like go to school, you get a good job per se, and then you have a family, and then life kind of continues from there. But it didn't really look like that particular order, or um, how exactly I had envisioned it for myself. And so I think that being able to reframe it as a choose your own adventure is the way that I like to look at it as well, is that you're usually having these fork road decisions that come up along your journey, and you can choose one, and it totally will change the trajectory of your life as well. But as I tried to get further and further away from it, demand kept growing, and life sort of tests you in that really interesting way to see if this is really
Yeah.
what you want, and if you're willing to work for it and be rewarded in a sense to live that dream.
Mm. Wow. I totally recognize what you're saying, because the way that I grew up was also that, like, yeah, when they always told me, like, when you get good grades in school, you finally get perhaps to university, and when you do your best there, you can eventually land a great job in a big multinational or a big corporate company. But it doesn't necessarily means that eventually is successful for you, because it also means, like, how do you define success for yourself, right? I think that's also
Yeah.
very important, and how you can follow then your own dreams and your own big your big legacy. So what were the kind of decision steps that you took to really follow your big legacy that you're building now? Okay, perhaps tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, I will preface as well. I did have a lot of guilt and shame with even making that decision. So if people tuning in are feeling this way, like, you're really not alone in that. And I think it's natural for those things to come up, to really identify that you care a lot about that decision as well, right? Because if you didn't care, then you probably wouldn't be experiencing all of these mixed emotions that come along with making such a big decision for your life and your business also, right? And so this way, depending on your circumstances, a lot can be factored by making that big decision, and I don't take that lightly either. And so considering that maybe I should have planned a little bit more, in a way, I'm very much a doer versus a thinker sometimes, and it sort of led me down various paths in a way. But at the same time, I truly think that, for me personally anyways, being able to dive fully into something and really see whether it's something that I want to pursue or something that I want to let go of, making that decision either way, the actual situation or moment that it happens, I feel like you will learn something regardless about yourself that will help better you, even before that, if you weren't even to give it a chance.
Yeah. This is interesting because you said that you felt a lot of like guilt and shame, and I'm sure that people recognize that in themselves, right? When you make a certain decision, like how did you overcome these obstacles? Because
Yeah.
that's a huge barrier, like
Mm-hmm.
when we feel that. So then really start living out what you really are after. Like, how can you start doing that? What kind of steps did you take?
I think that being able to grow that resilience and tenacity is so helpful, to be able to really become in tune with yourself and have that self-awareness is so powerful. And it's not easy either. I feel like it's a muscle that you have to keep flexing time and time again. And so it's a double-edged sword, I would say, in terms of having the right people around you that have actually experienced what you want to be doing, for example, is really helpful. I found to be able to speak to the actual experience that or situation of where I wanted to be and have that foresight, versus people who would judge you negatively, and to have resentment blamed upon you as well is something that I've experienced a lot of too, is that people that you thought would be happy for you, they really weren't, and had a lot of resentment because you were pursuing something that they had maybe always dreamed of themselves, but they didn't take the step to do it. So being able to differentiate who to share this news with, but also get insights and feedback from, I think is really helpful, so that you're actually getting it straight from the mouth of the people who have gone through it. Because otherwise there's so much noise out there, and it's hard to be all consumed by it also when you're making such a big decision, to just like sit in your gut with it in a way. And deep down, I believe you know what you want. And so it's just having that inner work really to just stand strong in it. And if it ends up not being also the thing that you wanted in the end, then you can always change that, and that choice is still up to you.
Yes. I love what you said. And also for me, like building that kind of tribe around me of like friends that uplift me on a daily basis, so it has been pivotal in my life, like especially the last couple of years when I left
Mm-hmm.
corporate and now to building my own business. I think for me it has been very important also to see, what other people were out there, like already building their businesses in the purpose-driven sense, and who are really living out their authentic selves, and who are building their bold legacies, And by
Yeah.
connecting with these people, you're like, oh, this opens kind of a new world for you, right? So that's so important. And like what you said, it's also important that you support each other, get feedback from these type of friends that really uplift you on a daily basis and give you good energy. Now,
Mm,
how did you kind of build that? I would maybe perhaps not tribe, or how did you build the right people around you from the beginning? Like
yeah.
where do you look for them? Where do you find them?
They're kind of like those hidden treasures, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
so it is a process, it is a journey. And I love that you do workshops, and be able to attract these type of people as well, right? Like
Hmm.
you see what's possible for you when you see it in other people, in a sense, and it has that relatability to be like, oh, I can do that too, right? Because somebody else has done it before you in a way. And so that's extremely like influential to see, like-minded people around you. And so sometimes it is a diamond in a rough in a sense, but I think being open-minded, sometimes it does start with you. As cheesy as that might sound, sometimes it's like tapping into what you innately love doing. I have met like people who I love dearly from just, going to dance classes at my local studio, or going out for, funny enough, I've met somebody on an airplane on the way to Portugal one time, and we just like had an amazing adventure.
Hmm.
So it's just
It
being,
was it wasn't me.
I wish it was, that would have been cool, right? But I think when you're being open and having that type of spirit, and energy uplift you, then you really do attract those type of people as well, right? Who are also open and willing to share more about their own journey, their skills, their dreams. That vulnerability really allows people to connect.
I love what you said, that perhaps finding the right friends or the right people around you, but it starts with you, and like with how you come across, and you know what you want to live out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I wanna make a little bridge there to see like what has been like a kind of a building block for you to become really authentic, and how you can really live out your own truth. Like, what is for you the most important step towards that?
I think being able to identify what is that definition of success or freedom to you is going to be like give you tenfolds of impact in that way, because so much of the time, like we've talked about earlier too, is it's hard to cut out that noise around you. So if you're scrolling on social media all the time, I'm like, I'll put my hand up to say that I'm guilty of it too, but right, but if you're able to really come back down to inner work and understanding what that clearly looks like for you, then or how you help other people as well as that catalyst, then that's going to be a major game changer in a sense. And so for me, it's like that mission is very much to communicate with integrity and create a positive impact with my business and the way that I act, like behave in my life as well. But also ultimately that freedom and success for me is really doing what I love most with who I love most at the end of the day, and being able to be really clear to not only articulate that for myself, because as a creative, it was really hard to find the words to even make sense of what I was feeling, especially because I'm so visual first sometimes that it can
Mm.
be really difficult to, put words to it.
Yeah, I've like what you say, like you're almost, I think for me what has also been very important was like you're talking about freedom. For me very important was also adventure. When I was working in corporate, I had nothing of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was working on like 150 square meters or so, and like four walls, four white walls kind of thing. So I also wanted to get out there and do more different kind of things, like things with personal growth, and building that like-minded tribe that we were just talking about, um, and becoming more authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
I think what's very important for, you know, for entrepreneurs who are just starting out, like myself as well, is like how can you articulate your message when you're that, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but when you're that authentic, like how can you nail down
Right.
the messaging? I think this is also where you can come in from what you advertise,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's that fine balance almost between that aspirational quality of where you want to be and how you dream and see the world in a sense of what you do, but it's almost this thing where it's not as specific either, right? So when I share my mission of being able to communicate with integrity and create a positive impact, for example, like that feels really good to me when I say that. And I think that when you find the words that connect with you, it resonates in a different way, because sometimes you just grab these things that sound really like cute or inspirational from Pinterest, but it doesn't really land with you wholeheartedly.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
yes. Get it, I get it. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it does take some testing. And I would say too, if you want to have some mindful, like external brainstorming, then perhaps ask people who do know you really well. How would you describe yourself? Because sometimes an exercise that I like to share too is how would you describe your business or, yourself, for example, as that business owner, like it was your best friend. So it really helps humanize it a lot further as well. But it's that connection point that is able to bridge that gap for people to build that trust and that relatability with you.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's really, really
Mm-hmm.
cool. Because then you can see yourself clearly from a different perspective, and you also get much more feedback, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of eye-opening to hear that from other people as well about yourself. Sometimes you're like, oh wow,
Mm.
I didn't actually know I was like that, but this is interesting.
It's a really feel good
Yeah.
exercise as well, because I think so oftentimes we get stuck in the day to day and we need to show up professionally or whatever so and so looks like professionally as well in your industry. But I think there's so much like superpowers in what you already do that I just wish people would own it like more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we all have this have that innate power in us, right? To do something
Mm-hmm.
amazing in the world and create a positive impact to build our legacy. Now, when we are building our or like building our mission statement, is there a certain formula that you use to nail that down?
I would say I always think about action-oriented things as well. So like in this case for mine, it was like communicating is a big one. So this is like very much the catalyst that I see branding, marketing, design as, and you know, coming back to your values then. So like integrity is a big one for me. And then ultimately, what is the effect that you want? So, and if we put that kind of in order as a Mad Libs in a way, then for me, it was being able to communicate with integrity to create that positive impact.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now, if you're just starting out as an entrepreneur, you're the branding expert here, right? So like what will be like the first step for any entrepreneur to start with when you're starting your own brand, when you're starting your mission? Like what is that process looking like?
I think it can be really sexy and glamorous to, you know, just go first with your external like stuff as well. So that being more of your logos, your color palette, your mood board. And that does have a very influential effect on who you're attracting, like you're mentioning, for lead generation, for sales even. But coming back again, like inner work is so important that's the one that I think often gets overlooked, because you want to fast forward and just look professional or credible. And so, but if it's not actually reflecting the values that you have, the type of people that you're really clear that you want to attract as well, then the visual communications of that externally isn't going to actually land properly either. And even thinking about it, I really like looking 360 at it too. So this way, holistically, if you're looking internally at your strategy, who you are, who you want to help, and then externally with the visual communications of it. And then as the third pillar, looking at the experiential side, that one is something that's often overlooked as well. So that, for example, if one of your values, just like mine, is transparency, then maybe you post your prices on your website, for example. So there are ways that you can subtly take action and have these wins in your business that is still reflective of your values, that doesn't feel like such a big feet in a way as your first steps.
Yeah. Now I know that you have an awesome brand party challenge coming up on, what is it, the 21st of June, right?
Yes.
So perhaps you can tell our listeners a little bit more about that, because I think it could be interesting for them to join this 5-day event.
Well, thank you so much for bringing it up. And if you're really enjoying our conversation already, then we're going to dive in much deeper as well. If you're looking for that brand clarity and how to actually, you know, bring in those values and how to bridge the gap between your color palettes and all the external sides of things as well. But the Brand Party Challenge is a free 5-day branding challenge to help purpose-driven businesses fast track their success and learn their core values, define their color palette, their mood board, and make sales in as little as 5 days together. So I'll send you the link, and you can feel free to share it with your community as well. I would love to have them part of it.
Absolutely. I'm going to share the link in the caption below. And I heard Christine just saying before we were talking that it's already 90% full. So, so you better hurry up if you hear this, and you're going to secure your place. And I think I'll join the challenge as well, Christine. So
yeah, please do.
Here you go. Now, before we wrap up, I would love to know, like, this is something I ask my listeners, or I ask my audience sometimes, is what is your bold legacy?
I should have known this was coming.
How's that gonna look like?
You know, for me, it's funny because I asked my podcast guest this in season 3 of my own podcast as well. And it was interesting for me to reflect on this, because it's one of these things that's like a very simple question perhaps, but it's very deep in a way. And so for me, CL Designs has always been a lifestyle business, and that's how I want it to be as well. I don't aspire to become a big agency and to sell it off for millions in the future. I think for me, coming back to my definition of success and freedom, that it's really being able to have that ability to do what I love with who I love most. And however that looks like, I'm totally open to the opportunities that come along with it.
Wow, that's a beautiful vision, Christine. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Jochem.
And well, last but not least, is there anything else that we haven't discussed yet that you perhaps would like to share right now with our listeners?
I would say if there's one big takeaway from this episode as well, just really step into that superpower. And like, honestly, that's where the magic happens. And you don't need anybody to justify that for yourself. You know yourself best and are able to make that decision, to make these choices in your life, to go after your dreams and what you want. So I am absolutely cheering your listeners on.
That's a great answer, Christine. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up, I want everybody to know that, like, where are the best places that people can find you and your work if they would love to know more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to connect further. And so if you want to take some time to chat or about your next project or see more about my work, you can go to christineldesigns.com, or I'm often hanging out quite a bit on Instagram as well. So come follow along at _CLIEU and at Brand Party Podcast.
Awesome, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing. And by the way, guys, don't forget that the Brand Party Challenge is coming up on the 21st of June. So you will find the link in the description below. Now, Christine, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, for all the insights that you were bringing, for your uplifting energy. And I hope to meet you soon in person one day. Hopefully.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christine.